Hello and welcome to this demo. In this demo, we're going to see how to deploy a basic version of Kubernetes using the Minikube utility. We first go to the Kubernetes website, which is kubernetes.io. And if you look at the website, you see a lot of very basic information about Kubernetes. What we need is instructions on installing Minikube. So we go into the documentation section, and here at the top on the left, you see the setup section. And this is where we have documentation about the various options available to install Kubernetes and get started with Kubernetes. So if you look here, you have instructions for setting up on a local machine and various hosted solutions, various turnkey solutions available for Kubernetes. And what we are interested in is Minikube, which is an option for setting up Kubernetes on a local machine. This is what we are going to get started. So here you have information about running Kubernetes locally on using Minikube. And the first thing that we need to do is install Minikube. So we're going to go into that. If you look here, you see that before you begin, you must have virtualization technology enabled in your computer's BIOS. We actually discussed this in one of the previous demos. So you must make sure that you have the virtualization technology installed or enabled on your laptop. So you most probably need to go into your BIOS setting and make sure that it's enabled. There's actually a way to confirm that. If you go into your hypervisor, such as a VirtualBox. In my case, I have VirtualBox installed on my laptop, and which is also a prerequisite for configuring Minikube. You actually need a hypervisor. It could either be VirtualBox, VMware Fusion, or KVM. Since VirtualBox is supported on all the three flavors, such as OS X, Linux, and Windows, I actually went with VirtualBox. So if you go to VirtualBox and if you try to deploy a new virtual machine by clicking on the new button, you can actually see if under the versions, if you see a 64-bit, then you most likely have virtualization technology enabled. If you don't see a 64-bit, then you may not have it enabled. So that's actually one way to check if virtualization technology is enabled on your system. So those are two requirements. The next one is to install kubectl, which is the kubectl command line utility. So if you click on install kubectl, you see instructions on installing kubectl. In our case, I have a Windows environment, so I'm going to click on Windows to get instructions on installing kubectl command line tool. Well, basically, it's not really an installation. It's just an executable that you have to download. So if you click on the link, it actually downloads the executable. You just have to save it locally on your laptop. Now, when working with Minikube, I've had issues with saving the files on any other drive other than C drive. So I would recommend to save the kubectl as well as the Minikube installation files or executable files in the C drive. So under C drive, I'm going to create a folder called Kubernetes, and I'm going to save the kubectl executable file there. Okay, so that's good. The next step, as you can see, is to install Minikube. Again, installing Minikube is very easy as well. It's not really an installation. You just have to download the executable. I'm going to go into the versions available and find the one for Windows, and that is Minikube Windows-AMD64. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to save it next to the same kubectl executable, and as soon as it's downloaded, I'm going to rename the file to minikube.exe. So it's actually an executable that you're downloading, but it's just not, it just doesn't have the exe extension. So I'm just going to download and rename it to minikube.exe. So that's done. I'm now going to go back to the documentation. And if I go back to the first page on getting started with Minikube, I can actually see the quick start guide. So I'm done with the installation of Minikube. The next step is to start working with it. As you can see, the instruction says run the Minikube start command. What I'm going to do is I'm going to arrange my windows side by side. So my Oracle VirtualBox Manager, I'm going to put it on the left, and the command prompt where I'm going to run the command, I'm going to put it on the right. Now, before I go ahead and run the Minikube start command, I just want to tell you what's going to happen. So I have my Oracle VirtualBox Manager installed on my laptop, but I don't have to manually go in and create any kind of virtual machines. As we discussed in the lecture, Minikube is going to automatically pull down the required Minikube image from the internet and deploy it as a virtual machine on my Oracle VirtualBox Manager. So I don't have to do anything manually. All I need to do is make sure that I have Oracle VirtualBox installed and working on my laptop. And then I downloaded the two executables, and they're both on my C drive and in a folder named Kubernetes next to each other. And all I need to do is run the minikube.exe start command. And as you can see, it's going to, this is where it downloads the Minikube ISO. And as you can see on the left, it's actually created the Minikube image or virtual machine and is running it right now. And it's now going to do all the post configuration tasks, such as getting the IP address and configuring the cluster and local cube, etc. So it's basically getting the Kubernetes cluster set up right now. And there you go, it's done. Now we have the Kubernetes cluster, which is a single node cluster installed and configured in a matter of minutes. I'm going to now go back to my documentation and find the next instruction. As you can see, we're already done with the first step, which is Minikube start. And I'm now going to run the next command. For now, I'm just simply going to copy these commands and run them, and just to make sure everything is working. We're not going to see what these commands do exactly, because we have a lot of lectures and demos that are coming up specifically on these topics, on how to run a container with Kubernetes, how to work with the kube control command line tool, how to create services and deployments, and all of that. For the sake of this demo, we're just going to follow these blindly. So we're just going to, just to make sure our environment is working. So I'm just going to copy the command kube control run, and I'm going to run that. And before I do that, I'm just going to run a few commands. So if I run the kube control get nodes command, it actually lists all the nodes in my cluster. In this case, you see the Minikube node. That's the only node that's on my cluster, which is what I intended to do. And it's in a ready state, which means we're good. And if I run the kube control get pods command, I see that there are no pods running. We'll look at what pods are later in this course. For now, I'm just going to run the command that I was told to run, and it says deployment hello minikube created. And if I run a kube control get pods command, I see that it's actually created a pod, which is basically a container. And right now I see that it's in a running state, which is good. It's actually a web server, so I'm going to need to access the web page. And in order to do that, I'm going to run this command called kube control expose deployment. And so I copy the command and I run that, and it says the service is exposed. So how do I access the web page? In order to do that, I'm going to run the command minikube service hello minikube-url, and it gives me a URL that I can use to access the web page. So the IP address is actually the IP address assigned to the Minikube VM, which is 192.168.99.101, and the port where my web server is exposed is 32688. And if I use that combination in a browser, I can actually reach the web page. So there you go, it's working. And before I finish, I'm actually going to clean up. So I'm going to run the delete deployment command to delete whatever I just deployed. And it says it's deleted. And I'm just going to clear my screen. Okay, so that's it for this demo. We deployed the Kubernetes cluster using Minikube, and it's in a working condition. We can now use this cluster going forward for all our exercises and labs going forward. So this is just one way of setting up. This is a really easy way of setting up a single node cluster. If you're interested in deploying a multi-node cluster, then we have other demos and lectures coming up on those. So feel free to choose whatever you're comfortable with. Thanks for your time, and I will see you in the next lecture.